Hello, everyone, and welcome to Seriously Loco, the Seriously Crazy fan podcast for El Paso Locomotive FC. I'm your host, Phil Bakke. I'm joined tonight, as always, by my co-hosts. We've got Mika Burrell. Mika, how's it going?
It's going well, man. It's been a little bit, 2 weeks or so, since we last spoke about Locomotive on the airwaves. So, yeah, it's good. Coming off a win at the weekend, so can't complain.
Yeah, it was like, I don't know, things timed out well because I ended up traveling for work last week, and so it was, yeah, it worked out well that Locomotive was like down so that we could get back in the swing of things this week, and
yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, obviously amazing to be able to talk about a win, and we'll talk the win over Pittsburgh. We'll talk about the upcoming match against San Diego Loyal. But we're joined we're also joined tonight by Christian Canales. Christian, how we doing?
It's a good day. I'm doing good. Glad to be here again.
Those listening, which is everybody, because there is no video, but Christian rocking one of the training kits from Saturday, the Earth Day kits. I gotta say, like, the orange, there's something about it. I really dig it.
Yeah, I was talking to someone after friend of the pod, Brian Johns, after the match, and we commiserated about the Adidas switch because nothing's been the same since. You can say what you will about quality or whatever, but they looked good.
We had and we got to do unique stuff like with BLK, which I don't know that I'd go back to BLK, but I do long for a provider or a supplier that will give us bespoke stuff again. Hummel, Charlie, somebody, Hummel. Anybody, anybody help. In terms of getting around to the admin and just taking care of some housekeeping stuff, we are Seriously Loco. We talk about El Paso Locomotive pretty much weekly, unless the boys take a week off. And so it's nice to get back into the saddle, as you said, Mika. But we are on all the major podcast platforms, basically anywhere you listen to podcasts. If you subscribe, follow, any of that, we'd really appreciate it. And if the platform allows to rate and review, we always appreciate a nice review if you enjoy the show. And you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook, Twitch. We're on like basically every social media that's existed. And you can check out our Patreon as well. There will be a tactical takeaways going up. I know I said I would get one up about the last match. I lied, but there will be one going up about Pittsburgh, likely tomorrow, Wednesday, somewhere in there. But stupid work stuff this morning got in the way of my normal pre-work writing time. So anyways.
That's all right, because I have yet to write a single thing this season. I promise I'll get on that. Tax season's over. I really don't have much of an excuse anymore.
You know what? Let's have a round of applause for tax season ending. Is this a round of applause?
It is not. It's like it was intro music, but I will take it. I love the support.
Hold on, I got it here. No, we'll just go with a.
There we go.
End of tax season. No, I think we're all excited. Everybody's excited for tax season to be over, but none more than Mika. Before we dive into analyzing this match against Pittsburgh, this good win, and breaking down the Loyal preview, Christian, you always start us off with a question. What do you got for us tonight?
So it's a question regarding like the sexiest topic of all, vitamins. No, it's pretty general, but it was just something that I was thinking about today. Like, what is your guys' like point of view on vitamins? Like, do you use them? Do you think they're bullshit? Like, because I know that people have opinions on that.
So I think that certain vitamins are useful. but they're like not the ones that people usually tend to take. I don't think, like, for example, vitamin C, like that. There's science behind why that's just making your pee expensive more often than not. Like, it's not getting absorbed. And I'm sure people who are listening to this that are smarter than me can explain it. But like fish oil, CoQ10, like collagen, those things are good for you. So I do take some of those, but I don't know I forget if it's like the fat soluble ones that are like not useful. I don't know. I'm a nursing school dropout, so let me just stay in my lane. But certain vitamins, yes. Certain vitamins, no.
I will say, like, I came from a weird family that was both like hardcore. The second that you start to feel sick, just start taking in obscene amounts of vitamin C, right? Like, of just like living on that level, and like early omega-3 fatty acid and like fish oil adopters. So like I feel like we had a weirdly high level of vitamin acceptance in my house growing up. I'm not as intense about it, just because, like, you know, there wasn't like, to me, a huge difference in how I like felt with or without like certain of the vitamins. The vitamin C thing, like, is totally like, there's nothing going on there. Like, and even my own father will admit that he knew he was taking beyond the level that like your body could even possibly absorb. Mm-hmm. So like knowingly doing that, you're accepting that like what I'm doing is not having an impact on me. Like, I'm just peeing this out.
Placebo, feeling like you're doing something. I think as long as your diet is not just like hot Cheetos and Arizonas, like, you're good. Like, just eat a balanced diet and you'll get your vitamins. This is such a geriatric question, by the way, Christian. So
I told you, sexy as hell.
I can feel the osteoporosis just setting in.
No, I was just wondering, because I was listening to a podcast about it on the way to work today, and I don't know, like, we grew up taking like chewable vitamins, and you know, I haven't, like, since I was a child, like, living at home, but I was like making a Target order, and I was just scrolling through the app, and they came up, and I really hadn't looked at vitamins ever, and I just always thought they were way more expensive than they actually are. So I went and I just added it to my cart, because I figured, like, for 8 cents a day, if it like just makes me think that I'm healthier, then why not, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It is funny though, like, just how, like, what's the stuff, I guess, that you know, speaking about athletes and all of that, like, what is the stuff that they focus on, and what's the stuff that they, you know, and I think it all, like you said, Mika, like, so much of it ends up coming back to diet, like,
truly,
and like what you're actually eating, like, versus, you know, I don't think at most, you know, elite sporting institutions, they're not handing out like the little cups of like, take all your vitamins.
Flintstones vitamins.
Here's your one a day gummies. But yeah, I think like it does come down to ultimately like whatever works for you and whatever you're comfortable with, like, probably fine. But there are some that probably have more efficacy and like more data behind them than others.
Right.
Well, all that being said, guys, it's time to dive in and talk Locomotive's win over Pittsburgh Riverhounds. The Seriously Loco match review. 2-0, sorry. It felt like a 1-0 in some ways, but a 2-0 win. And I guess like the place to start, you know, I think many games we would talk about like kind of the general impressions, but I almost want to start from the more like talking about like the details of this game, because one, it is, I think we can all agree it's a really good result. Clean sheet at home, like, always feels nice, especially against a team that is notoriously tough to beat. Established manager, all that stuff. And I guess what stuck out to me about this is how settled and how routine it is becoming, at least over the last like maybe 4 games, with this starting 11, and acknowledging that Mark Navarro starts from the bench because of his fitness issues, and he does come into this one. But when the starting 11 came out, and it was, I mean, basically unchanged from the last few matches, like, we've really stuck to a formula here. It does start to feel like we're settling on maybe not the best 11, but just like we're settling on a starting 11 that gets results.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think that's abundantly true. Yeah, it's interesting that you made the distinction between like best 11 versus, like position by position best 11 versus like the best 11 together as a group. And I think as a collective, this one, plus minus maybe Mark Navarro or maybe even like Jose Aron Gomez for Ricky Zacarias, like, I do think by and large this is the team that can go out there every week and fight for 3 points. More often than not, take those 3 points, we hope. We'll see as the season goes on. But I think when we spoke to Brian Clarhaut, I think it was after either the second or the third match at home, and obviously we'd had that torrid start. I mean, he was pretty honest about not knowing yet who that best 11 was. Now we see in our first game back from an extended layoff, 2 weeks without competitive football, and we still come out with a lineup that we could have probably predicted. I think that tells you a lot. And they went out and did the business. So hard to argue with anyone in this lineup necessarily losing their place, or at least not for any extended period of time. I think there will be switches here and there based on opponents, but this does seem to be a settled starting 11 for sure.
With Christian, with the improvements and like things we've seen over these matches, maybe the area where we were, most critical up front was in midfield. And I think over the last few matches, we've obviously like acknowledged the fact that there's been such an improvement, particularly in that pivot with Eric and Liam. And it continued tonight, like against a team that, was intent kind of on eliminating the midfield from the game. And Eric and Liam still managed to have like a pretty solid one.
Yeah, I mean, coming into the season, Eric was really the only midfielder who we felt like had proven himself. Liam was there last year, but, we were kind of low on him. And he's been solid this year. So, maybe it was just a system thing, last year, maybe he just wasn't being played to his strengths, and that's changed this year. And so, we couldn't have predicted that, nor could we have predicted what Kosticin or Petrovic would be able to contribute. So, yeah, they were definitely able to come out and have a really good game despite Pittsburgh's best efforts, like you said.
And I think I cut you off. Did you have any other thoughts on the 11?
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, the last time we came out with a different 11 was, Navarro played against Louisville, but before that, the last time we had a different lineup was against Detroit. Ever since then, it's been the same lineup, and we haven't lost since. So there's something to it.
Settling on an 11, it's something we've talked about like every year, and just we've never really been able to fall into these sorts of like rhythms because of injuries and all sorts of stuff. And I like the fact that despite the Navarro injury, the team has continued to perform well, like even and mostly unchanged, like with that one exception. And it has felt nice that it seems like they've built like this sort of chemistry. But again, I something I wanted to talk about today is the fact that like Bob Lilly, Pittsburgh Riverhounds manager, like long-standing, personality in American lower league soccer. And he has this real, I guess, reputation of getting results, like particularly, winning ugly, like that's Lily ball. It's talked about. And it was really interesting because from the off, literally 4 minutes in, Locomotive get their first chance from a ball over the top toward Lucho Solonyak. And I mean, Mika, it really was kind of this totally different approach to what we typically see from Locomotive of maybe getting the ball down, playing a lot. Like they went pretty direct, and it did cause Pittsburgh problems.
Yeah, it was a little bit jarring actually to see Lucho Solonyak running the channels, because I don't think that we've necessarily ever thought of Luis that way or as that kind of a striker. I think he's definitely like the best mix of like playmaking forward and like penalty box predator, but never like a sprint into the half spaces kind of guy. So I actually asked Brian about that, was that, we don't think of Lucho that way. Was that just a tactic for tonight, or and if so, was that more about actually like gaining territory, or actually thinking you could score a goal from that? And Brian said that it was kind of a bit from column A and a bit from column B, because I mean, you talk about the first run that Lucho makes where he isolates Farrell, I think it is, checks back onto the stronger right foot and has a pretty good shot at the near post that's saved by Waite. Warning shot, right? That was one instance where the long ball actually resulted in a chance. But other than that, I feel like the long ball was really being utilized to gain positioning and territory further up the field. Because to Pittsburgh's credit, I suppose, it wasn't that easy to play on the ground against them. They were outnumbering us in the wide areas. They really weren't concerned about midfield, really. And
they kicked the absolute hell out of everybody. They commit 22 fouls in the game.
100%. So I think the reason that we asked Brian that is because I felt like it wasn't about like Lucho Solonyak is going to run the channels and this is what'll score us a goal. It was more about this is what's going to move us up the pitch. And I think it worked. I mean, it was getting us throw-ins. It was getting us space. And, I don't know that Pittsburgh necessarily knew how to deal with that ever. I don't think they ever figured it out. In the second half, like you said, we see the tactic of stop them. And we know what that means, right? Kick them.
Yeah.
So, and even with that, I don't know that was necessarily all that successful. So yeah, I mean, just really, really like a small thing that maybe you wouldn't notice if you weren't thinking too much about it. But we at Seriously Loco like to deep it over here. So to me, it just felt like, okay, it's not necessarily that we want him running the channels, it's that we want to move the ball up the field. Because, for us, having been off 2 weeks, the passing wasn't that great. So It almost felt like a means to an end from our perspective as well. Like, we can't string any passes together, then let's stop passing and go direct, get it launched, as they say. So, I mean, it worked out. And there's a lot of different bits and bobs here that we can talk about. So,
yeah, I mean, to your point, one of the things that I was noticing was just like how many corners we were forcing from these sort of like long balls. And it it's just an automatic, not that they led directly to any goals or anything like that, but just the threat, moving everybody up the field, gaining yourself that sort of momentum, I think is important. And Christian, I mean, where this kind of takes me is the adaptability that we've seen from Brian's squad tactically, and like how they are. I mean, we've seen Locomotive play probably like 5 or 6 different ways already this season in terms of how they approach the game, how direct they play, whether they get the ball on the ground, all that stuff. It does seem, compared to the last two managers, which really had kind of like, this is my philosophy and I will not veer from that. It does feel like Brian is adaptable to these situations and really does game plan like specifically for a lot of these matches. And maybe these tweaks are like, I mean, it just feels different from what we're used to with Locomotive.
Yeah, and I think that the more I thought about it, I think that part of that is that he is our first manager with like, this isn't as to disrespect any, John or Mark, but with like legit experience. He has head coaching experience in Europe, and John can't say that, and Mark can't say that. And you don't get those jobs because you fall into them most of the time, Tottenham notwithstanding.
Damn, dog.
Spurs can't help but catch strays. Like, they just conceded a 7th goal against Newcastle. That's how bad this is.
No, but but seriously, I mean, he has something that Mark and John did not, and you see it in the just knowledge of the game and the adaptability. And I think that just comes from seeing more. He's seen more than John or Mark probably have, even though he's been coaching for less, maybe. So I just think that that's a consequence of that.
Remember before the season started and we were like scouring the internet trying to figure out who this guy was, and I said to y'all, I was like, I think he might be a tactics nerd. Because we found Brian's like master classes on YouTube, and it was like, this is incredible. Like, I don't think we've ever heard any Locomotive coach in the past like get this granular with the tactics. So I mean, it's kind of cool seeing this come to pass, for Locomotive. So
it is, I think, and we'll maybe talk a little bit more about it getting on to the second half. Just in that it does feel satisfying that a Locomotive manager had Bob Lilly like come to the swap, and the guy who is known as the tactics guy in USL, like for better or worse, like it's like, oh, this is the tactical brain in USL, and for Brian to outfox him, like that does feel satisfying as a Locomotive fan. And I think like we talked from the beginning about the fact that Brian and the team have responded to like what's been set out in the match before of, hey, we weren't good enough here. We weren't good enough here. And now they're getting even more proactive the more time he gets with this squad about what is the challenge of the team in front of us, and like, what do we need to be good at to keep them from being dangerous. And I think the one thing that we should call out, because it wasn't a perfect performance, like I think Brian and the squad would admit that. Defensively, especially in the first half, there were some moments that felt like a little bit edgy, a little bit kind of ropey, as they say, like just these kind of like maybe moments of Pittsburgh sort of getting in behind. And I guess like, is the lesson that, hey, like sometimes you just like take it when you can, and like, hey, we were good enough on the night and didn't allow a goal? Or is there more of a concern of like, hey, on a different night, like Pittsburgh punishes a few of these moments and maybe like it wasn't good enough? Like, is it enough to say that like, hey, we kept a clean sheet and like that's enough? Because when you don't allow a goal, you're probably going to win.
Yeah, I think there were some moments, especially in the first half, that were, as you said, ropey. I think one of the kind of instances that kept kind of happening, and it's something that we've kind of like praised in the past, but this is where like the other side of the coin comes in, is Bence Pavkovic being a little adventurous with his positioning at times. And, I sound kind of silly to myself bringing it up, because it's actually him bombing up the field that allows Kostishin to drop back into his position and lay that dime for the first goal. So, I mean, you win some, you lose some, but there were some times when Pavkovic was kind of not where you'd expect him to be, and then a space opened up, or they were trying to outnumber him as Miles Lyons would aggressively get up the pitch. So I think like defensively those areas were a little bit suspect, but I mean, I think I think Benny makes like a handful of saves. Statistically, he gets credited with like 4 saves, but I don't remember any of those being like terribly challenging. I mean, there's the one that he saves very, very close to his near post, but I mean, there's zero angle there. And everything else is like caught or, just kind of controlled. So
that save was at 2-0. So even even then, like their most dangerous chance was from.
Yeah, I don't think
they're already down.
Even credits them with a big chance, whereas we get 2 big chances and convert them both, which is not always the case. As we're not always that efficient. Locomotive are. So yeah, I mean, definitely something to look at, of course. And Brian was pretty honest about that. That with the 2 weeks off, mentally it was a help to get that rest, just to reset a little bit, think about other things, have some time off, but, on the pitch, it did seem like there was a little bit of rust to shake off.
Yeah, I do think, and maybe this feeds into the conversation coming up, but positionally, this was, like, maybe one of the most interesting, like, incarnations of this 4-4-2 of... Like nobody, this is no spoilers for Ted Lasso, like no plot points involved here. But in this latest episode, he talks about playing a system where there's so much movement that positions no longer have any meaning, and that is what it felt like a little bit with Locomotive on Saturday night, where it was just like. Everybody was popping up in kind of like odd areas and yeah, it was just everybody was interchanging, everybody was moving. So I don't know if Brian is maybe all of this is just like maybe he's just watching Ted Lasso and I'm kidding. I'm not being serious. But it was like, I guess in terms of like how it played out, this was one of the more, for how direct it was, for how sort of like orthodox it might have felt in the sense that like we played pretty direct, we played like organized defensively. There was a lot of like interchanging and positional sort of uniqueness going on in this one. So I promised the people during my halftime thoughts that we would do 5 minutes on Petrovic's opener. Denis Kostishin, long ball over the top. Petar Petrovic, left foot, touch with the left foot on the run, takes it down to his right foot. Second touch, slid into the corner. Duke Keith described it in the moment as magical. And this goal, I mean, I'm just going to open up the floor, like, for us to wax lyrical about this goal.
No, it was fantastic. And, you know, in the press box, like, as soon as it happened, Joe Rodriguez was calling for goal of the week. It was, you know, it was that good. You knew it the second that you saw it that it was something special, you know, without even having to see a replay or anything like that. So, yeah, I mean, it was incredible. It's probably, I don't know, maybe one of the, if it's not number one, it's certainly in top 3 of probably, like, best Locomotive goals ever. For my money, next to... I'm going to say Edson's bike.
Yeah.
And Lucho's back heel last year. Or 2 years ago, I don't remember. 2 years ago.
Was that 2 years
Diego
ago?
Luna scored some belters for us, too, to be fair.
True.
Like, on the dribble.
Yeah, I think, but it was the finish, though. Diego's goals, I think, were the build-up, the runs, but I'm talking about pure finishing here.
That Lucho back heel in the air against RGV was absolutely, that was insane.
Truly.
Edson bike, I mean, yeah. Edson bike on El Paso Strong night, like, tough to argue. But
iconic.
Yeah.
I mean, this goal could end up being iconic too. again, like as I just kind of like criticize some of the positioning in the back, it's the positioning and the kind of total football, if you will, that allows Kostichin to drop into that right center back space, survey the field. He gets more time on the ball in that area of the pitch than he would otherwise. Finds the run of Petr Petrovic, stays on side, and then, like you said, brings it down with one foot, raffles it home with the other. Just superb. And I think Petr Petrovic, hey, shout out Banana Man, by the way, because last time we spoke, he was like, this guy's going to explode. I think we're starting to see that a little bit. He might be the most, I mean, this is an early shout, but maybe the most like predatory forward in USL. And I mean that in terms of like not necessarily like pure numbers. Obviously, I think there's going to be a lot more volume goal scorers, but like that sense of like something's going to drop for me here. Like he has that IQ. And I mean, you could see why Brian was desperate to bring him in. And he got his guy, and now he's punishing other people instead of Brian's team. So, yeah, I mean, great finish in Louisville. That was a predatory, kind of sniffing out the chance as well, even more so than this one. But I mean, on this one, and just seeing that Pittsburgh's backline was not expecting that pass to come.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, that's Danis Kostichin's first assist for the club. It feels like he's been like the playmaker.
Yeah.
For this side, and of course he has been. I mean, assists aren't everything, but nice for him to get rewarded in a tangible way as well. Just an amazing play, amazing ball, amazing finish. So much technique and technical quality on display. Can't argue with any of that, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, as you've already said, like Kostichin popping up in the spot that he does is. It's kind of genuinely bizarre when you watch it the first time because you're just like, why?
Well, in the press box, we were like, oh, who's got the assist? Bense?
Right.
And it's like, that's not Bense. That dude is small, whoever that is back there.
And he plays, he plays that inch perfect ball, like just in terms of it dropping exactly right for Petar, but he still has so much to do in bringing that ball down, like taking a good first touch. And he just he kills it with his left foot, brings it down. And he's on the run still. Like that's what is so like amplifies the difficulty of this goal is he's doing this all because the ball finds him exactly in stride. And it is like inch perfect in that way. He has to like adjust his body shape a little bit to take it down with his left. But then if he like there is so little space between him and the keeper, him and the defender that's challenging him, that he doesn't have time to take it down with his left and then try to shoot with his left. And he's doing all of this whatever fucking calculus like in real time of like my best chance to score is with my right. And I mean we now even have kind of the like sideline or the the touchline camera footage of Dennis and Petar like walking off at halftime and Dennis saying like how insane it was that he brought it down with his left and scored with his right. And that is from another extremely technically gifted player. So anyways, just that goal in and of itself, I think one, it shows just how good Petar is like in a snapshot. Like if you wanted to capture like, hey, this is the like football brain and technical ability of this dude, you could just do that in one. And it was Locomotive like finding a solution to a problem that they had been trying to figure out for the entire first half, which is like, how do we get the right guy on the end of this in a position where he can score? Because we've been playing direct, we've been finding Lucho in the channels, we haven't really been able to fashion that like really, really good chance. And it is actually like Petar making this outside in run, which creates that opportunity. And yeah, just absolutely unbelievable technique on display. I said in a tweet from Seriously Loco that it'll be a long time in this league before you see two better touches than the two that Pitar takes in this goal. And yeah, it is just complete commercial for like the amount of technical ability that he's got. But they go into halftime 1-0 up, and really the thought here now is like, how do we avoid being Tulsa or like these other teams where Pittsburgh goes on the road and creates a bunch on the counter, has less of the ball, that sort of stuff. And the second half, despite Pittsburgh having like maybe a couple of moments, the second half really was about like limiting Pittsburgh, even when it felt like maybe they were building some momentum in the game. We didn't allow Pittsburgh to ever really play their game. It always felt like they were playing like Locomotive's game, with maybe some leeway or whatever, but they were always like kind of going uphill against a Locomotive team that limited them well.
Yeah, I mean, Pittsburgh, they end up actually edging us in possession, which I think to them was probably bizarre because they couldn't really do anything too useful with the ball. I mean, the other thing, too, that I think hurt Pittsburgh and maybe is a question mark over the start to their season really is like post-Russell Cicerone. I think that the secondary scoring in Pittsburgh it's not apparent who's going to step up. I think Edward Kizza has been really disappointing to start this season. No goals, no assists, hooked on an hour at this game. I mean, you're down on the road, and he got hooked after about an hour against RGV too. They won that game, but it's like he's just not contributing in the way that you would expect.
Was it his replacement who was hooked then 10 minutes later or whatever?
Was that
DZ Harmon?
Yeah, he
Harmon.
came on.
He was one. There was a triple sub when Kizza went out, but
yeah, it came on, kicked a couple folks, got a yellow card, deuced. Like,
yeah,
insane. Yeah, so yeah, I think Pittsburgh just like if it just seems like so far if Deco's not putting the ball in the net, if Forbes isn't creating, they don't really have that many answers. And it kind of reminds me almost of like, I mean, bear with me, we like to make our dramatic metaphors and comparisons on here, but like of kind of like late stage Atletico Madrid where they're like trying to get out of this defensive first mindset and do a little bit more interesting things on the ball, and by doing that they're like destabilizing themselves a little bit and like what makes them great. Yeah. Because I do think, like, I've listened to the USL show and correct me if I'm wrong, Phil, but I think you guys have talked a little bit about how like Lily wants to be a little bit more interesting, shall we say? And maybe that's just part of the growing pains of this. Because I mean, second goal, like, what's Waite doing out there, right? Like trying to head the ball and keep play going. Like that's something that like a more aggressive, maybe attacking side would do. He gets it totally wrong. So there's just like some individual play in the Riverhounds camp that just isn't quite up to scratch right now.
As like, I'm curious, Christian, what you made of Riverhounds like on the night, and like, did they put up a fight like you were expecting? Where, I mean, last year it felt like we toiled and toiled only to lose 1-0, right? Like this year, the 2-0, did it feel like a test? Did it feel easy? Like how, like from your perspective, like is this a feather in Locomotive's cap, or were Pittsburgh just not that good?
I mean, you have to I think put it in perspective. Was the game a little more like open than last year? Yeah, I think so. But we were at home, number one. And also, our two goals were like, one was like a world beater and the other one was just like a meme. So, you take those two out, those two like that probably won't happen again. And it's a 0-0 draw, which is what most people would predict. So I definitely think, it says something that those things are going our way, because we've had like worldy chances before that just don't go in. But it did on Saturday. Yeah. So I think that says something. And that, we had to, in order to get those chances, we had to do something that the team is not used to doing. There was that adaptability that we keep talking about. Both of our goals came off of long balls, which don't traditionally get played, in El Paso. So I think that it could just as easily have been 0-0 as it was 2-0. But I don't think that's not to discredit the win or anything, because I think it's a fantastic win.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And I think in terms of like Lily Ball, or, whatever you want to call it, like Pittsburgh's game plan maybe not working or being made less effective, they did not have a single counterattack, like as defined by Opta, in the game, which obviously is, kind of associated with like how they play, like playing on the break and being able to create chances. They also, they did create one counterattack, but not a shot off the counterattack. They also didn't create any shots from corners or free kicks, which feels significant for Locomotive, given the fact that like we've kind of felt not great about how Locomotive's defended from set pieces. And in this one, Pittsburgh's not able to, like, not only are they not able to create like a real dangerous chance off a set piece, they actually aren't able to create a shot off a set piece, which does feel like a step in the right direction for Locomotive as well.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, because I do think the set piece defending, particularly the corners, was better. I think we're still like having to deal with like second phase balls, but at least that first clearance is a little bit more convincing, at least in this game. Obviously, we have to see it continue, and it's not easy because Pittsburgh have like some absolute units back there. I mean, Farrell, Hogan, Biasi, or like those are big boys. So in the second half especially, they were getting more of those corners, and we thought maybe we were a little bit under the cosh, but like you said, not really. They didn't really like feast from them or anything. So
yeah, and I was gonna say, I think another big thing is that they only had how many free kicks, set pieces? Sorry,
set pieces, 5 total.
Yeah, and I think that came from us doing a good job of keeping the ball. And I don't know, me and Mika kept saying it all night on Saturday. Something was off, because like they continually gave the ball away. Like,
not only gave it away, but put it out to touch.
Yeah, they stayed like kicking like unforced errors off the charts.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was something that El Paso was actively doing, or if they had a plan that they just could not execute. And honestly, I was shocked when I saw that they ended the game with more possession than us, because it certainly did not feel that way watching the match.
No, that's fair enough. And I mean, it is like we talked about, the second goal direct, it is it is meme worthy in the way that it comes about. Lucho Soloniak played in behind by a ball over the top by Mark Navarro. Wait, the goalkeeper comes for it, doesn't win the header, and it's an easy tap in for Lucho. Significant in the fact that it does effectively like kill the game off, but even more significant in the fact that Lucho does become the lone top goal scorer in Locomotive history. Although this, we joke that like this title could change hands like multiple times throughout this season, since the next closest obviously still is active at the club in Josue Aron Gomez, but he's top of the scoring charts now at Locomotive all time. And little bit of a meme worthy goal, but this was again like comes from a ball over the top from Locomotive and a forward able to run onto it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the achievement by Lucho is huge. I think he's been one of the best signings in club history, to be honest. It's not that long ago that he was plying his trade elsewhere in Texas, and it just doesn't. If he feels Locomotive through and through, I mean, he's made a huge mark. And like you said, like him and Josue will have that kind of friendly competition going on from here on out, and I think can only be a good thing for Locomotive fans, to be honest. That both of them can like continue to trade this achievement, if you will. But yeah, the play is outrageous. Like, Waite is actually quite a good keeper, and I don't know. It almost looked like he forgot that he was outside of his box. Like, it's not that he made any motion towards the ball with his hands. It's just, like, I don't know that this might have something to do with why they kept throwing the ball away, like, and booting it out to touch, because, like, they just seemed like they could not get to grips with the dimensions of the pitch, and I don't know, like, what it was, but like it just felt like they were uncomfortable playing, and that's weird for Pittsburgh because they are the third winningest away side in USL Championship history, so they just really couldn't settle. And I mean, when your keeper's doing something like that, it's just not your night. Lucho will never have another easier finish, and you know, we take that all day. But
the challenge I'll throw out there though is like, watching it back a couple of times, I'm wondering if Waite... obviously, Waite has a choice, right? Because he can retreat to his line and try to just defend Lucho's shot. But I do think he does have a little bit of a Sophie's choice of, like, do I go and try to win this as a sweeper, right? Or do I face him one-on-one? There is not, like... Watching it back, I don't think there's a Pittsburgh defender that gets to Lucho. Like, I do think that he wins that ball regardless of whether the keeper's there or not. Like, he's getting there, and he's bearing down one-on-one. So I do think there is a little bit of a, like, and maybe, you know, maybe you'd say, like, you take your chances, like, charging out from your line or something like that. But I do think that Waite is in sort of a, like, tough position of like, do I go and try to win this ball, or do I just retreat to my line and hope for the best in a one-on-one with Lucho freaking Solonyak?
But that's where Brian Clarhaut's tactics are so brilliant, though, because the long ball allows us to get the lead first off, and then force Pittsburgh out even further, because that's what ostensibly that's what Waite's trying to do, is keep the pressure on and keep the ball,
right? And
that's why the defenders are as high as they were. So yeah, I think, you know, like you said, on one side it's like not really a great choice for him, but on the other, I think like the tactics are just like,
yeah,
you know, spot on, and it is a mistake, but I think we were positioned, we were primed to do something like that because we had forced Pittsburgh out. This happens in what, like the 70th minute, something like that. When's that?
Yeah,
so
68 or 69, somewhere in there.
Yeah, so they were desperate to equalize at least, you know. So I think the stars align for us, but
yeah, I think it's one of those where it's like the decision does look really horrible, right? Like, as soon as he doesn't win the header, like, it is worst case scenario. Like, the forward now has a tap in. I do think that it's obviously not good. Like, I'm not trying to say like, yeah, it was great goalkeeping or something like that. It was giving, you know, first 5 games of last year Evan Newton, but
we would know, right? Yeah, exactly.
Well, so with that being said, like, Locomotive able to see things out. It was relatively like there were a couple of moments of threat I will say before the goal at 1-0, I was feeling a little bit edgy about the whole thing, but I think that had more to do with my own personal like trauma regarding El Paso Locomotive and not as much to say about the performance on the night. But they're able to see things out, like able to get to the finish line, comfortable 2-0 win, all things considered. And Christian, you had a question actually like prior to the match, which then got asked in the press conference. But talking to Brian Clarhaut about reinforcements, because something we've talked about on this podcast is like the one Achilles heel that it does feel like this squad has is in depth, and just like maybe not having that like next level of reinforcements. So curious, like one, your thoughts on like his answer, and then like what this squad, because we've talked about, hey, we've got a settled 11. Well, what do we need to do to add to that to make sure it like lasts the whole season?
Yeah, he gave me a disappointingly like political answer, but you know, that's kind of to be expected. But I was just hoping, you know, because he likes talking, so I was hoping that there would be a little bit more. But no, I mean, he mostly just said that, you know, he's always looking. So he didn't say, you know, no, we're good right now, which is, you know, something, right? But you know, he had just mentioned that he's looking, and you know, if all the pieces fit, then he's not hesitant to bring anyone in. So unfortunately, you know, there's more pieces than we could ever be aware of from our position, so it's hard for us to even speculate really on who any possible, you know, who they might have their eye on or anything like that.
He did know exactly when the international window was ending, though. So, like,
there you go.
He did check his watch. Like, I think it's in like 48 hours. So he's
the
looking.
Lawyer side of Mika coming in.
No, it did seem, it was funny because like from my perspective, and maybe this is like being outside the room, it felt like the answer was almost more committal than probably how it felt in the moment. Because like my thought is like the non-committal answer would be like, yeah, like we'll see, not really sure, like we've got a solid squad, like we're not going to add to it. And his answer was definitely like, or it felt anyways, like reading it, that we've got additions in mind. Like we do feel like we need to do business.
I mean, yeah, he never once closed off the idea of improving the squad. I think any manager wants more players at all times, because they don't want, one, an injury crisis, two, complacency, because again, we've complimented that we found an 11, but we also don't want these 11 players thinking that they're untouchable, right? And I'm not saying that they do, but it's just, that's part and parcel of professional football. Everyone needs to be looking over their shoulder. I think it can only be a good thing that there's competition. So I have no doubt that Brian probably feels that way too, in wanting quality, but it has to be right for the club as well. So
yeah. All things considered, though, I absolutely didn't think that Miles Lyons would have Mark Navarro looking over his shoulder, but he's been like really good. So you know, who knows? Like maybe the squad is deeper than we think, but no, I do expect the team will do something. It'll just be interesting to see what that something is.
And I'd rather it not be like a 25-day contract like other folks are doing. So
yeah, no, couldn't be me. Well, guys, 3 points are 3 points, and to get it against a team like Pittsburgh that has such a reputation for being road menaces, it is a quality 3 points from the lads. And all of that being said, they head to San Diego on Saturday to face San Diego Loyal, and no doubt a very tough test, and we'll talk about that after a quick break. The Seriously Loco match preview. Welcome back, everybody. Guys, diving into the preview. San Diego Loyal away this weekend, Saturday night, 10 o'clock kickoff Eastern time, so it's a late one for your boy, but but that being said, it's a trip to San Diego, a tough test on the road. I would say probably the toughest test since Louisville, in terms of like reputation, and coming up against a team that is perfect at home so far this season. 5 wins from 5. How are we feeling going into a tough road matchup against the team second in the West right now behind Sac Republic?
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely going to be a challenge. Like you said, San Diego are in pretty glistening form. I don't know. I don't know what to think of this one. I mean, our record with them is not very long, but also not very good. We've never beaten them. They tend to be high-scoring affairs, which, is not good for anyone's blood pressure. But yeah, there is a little bit of distraction though for them, because I do think that they are playing Seattle Sounders in the Open Cup, if I'm not mistaken, on the 26th. So yay for that. Unless they beat them and then they're feeling themselves, that would really suck. But yeah, we get a little bit more rest than the opposition for once. So I mean, here's hoping that we can at least go out there and do something respectable. But I don't know. I mean, New Mexico United was able to take a draw from them. Like, they're literally bottom. Like, hopefully we can do something there. So
yeah.
Wait, New Mexico United is last in the West?
In the West, yeah.
Oh man,
yeah.
That just warms my heart. Like,
so. To Mika's point, I think they definitely, San Diego can definitely be got at. I mean, they are, second in the West right now, but they've also played New Mexico and Tulsa and Detroit.
Phoenix twice.
They have played Phoenix twice. That's true. And only won. I think. I think they had a win and a draw there too.
They
against
drew
Phoenix.
Away. Yeah.
So, it's there. That's not to say that they can't be a good team, but there's not necessarily blowing everyone out of the water either. And I think that they are also quite different than last year's San Diego. There's no Kyle Vassell, no Thomas Among there either. So I'm sure that, the replacements are serviceable too. They have Ronaldo, Damus there. Who Brian will be happy to see, I'm sure. I think that it doesn't have to be a terrifying match. I think the way the team is feeling right now, the way Locomotive are feeling right now, has to be good. We played Sacramento at the beginning of the season just a few weeks ago, and that was, I think, it was 1-0. So that was when we were still finding ourselves. So I think that 3-loss start to the season kind of put us behind. But aside from that, I think that we are probably a more competitive team than some people will think. But I think that people are starting to come around to and realize that the machine's running now. It's up and running.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there in that I think San Diego, and especially watching this last match against Tampa Bay, Tampa Bay are in a particularly like low ebb right now in terms of their confidence, in terms of just like who are they this year, right? Like they were predicted by many to be at the very, very top of the Eastern Conference, and they've been obviously like pretty poor to start the season. They don't fashion a shot on target, and yet like San Diego is a very, very lucky deflection away from a 1-1 draw in this game. Despite being probably the better team for like large portions of it and all that, like they didn't put a lot of their chances away. And I guess the thing that gives me the most confidence about Locomotive heading into this match, like if there's one thing I could focus on, it's the fact that in every game with a trademark or like headline goal scorer, Locomotive have done a fantastic job of limiting that player's effectiveness, right? Like the big name guy has never hurt Locomotive up to this point. Cameron Lancaster like barely had a touch in Louisville. maybe Marcus Epps you could make an argument for in Tulsa, like had more of an influence in terms of a guy having big influence. But you know, you look at this game, Dequa, like hardly a threat. And so the same sort of thing, like for Loyal, I do think like no one will be able to game plan better for Ronaldo Damus than Brian Clarhaut, who was literally his manager like less than 6 months ago.
I'm looking now, there are 2 players on San Diego Loyal who are starters that Brian will know very well. Apparently Joe Corona was also with Give Sons Fall last year in 2022 also. So yeah. There's a storyline there for sure.
the narrative stew is chunky leading into this Loyal match. But I mean, I guess the real story here is like, do we think that those factors, like Brian's ability to game plan, all of that stuff, can overcome the fact that Loyal has been unbeatable at home?
Yeah, I think so, but I think even more than like tactics is like we need to go in there and be a little disrespectful, to be honest, because I think that there are a lot of good sides rocking up to Torero Stadium or even hosting San Diego Loyal and showing them way too much deference. And I put Tampa Bay Rowdies in that camp. I mean, I know they had to go across the country to play them, but still, you're Tampa Bay Rowdies. Like, you are a historic football club, and you let them put 11 shots on you. Like, no shot.
Yeah.
I mean, Tulsa, I think, gave up 60% possession to them. It's, you know, I just feel like people are playing the occasion and not the team when they face San Diego Loyal for whatever reason. I mean, Landon Donovan's not the coach anymore, right? Like, I don't know what could possibly be like intimidating people right now. I think I think they feel bigger and more daunting than perhaps they are. So yeah, I think we need to like go there and just not show them any respect, to be honest, play our game. But yeah, of course the tactics will come into that. And they too tend to play like wing backs. I think they're a lot more like exciting, I think, and forward thinking in that kind of formation than say a Pittsburgh, with I think Nick Moon and Bodley on either wing, Corona in the midfield, Damus of course leading the line. But yeah, I mean, just don't give these guys. Don't play down to them, you know, or play, you know, like just play within yourselves. I think that's one of the biggest things, because some of these results just, I don't know. I think that they've played some good sides and are kind of getting away with some things, honestly. So that's just the vibe I get. I don't know. I'm less interested really in the tactics and more just like just playing them, not playing the occasion, if that makes any sense at all.
I think that's fair, and I think it's fair to say too, since the Louisville match, it does feel like Locomotive have that in them in terms of like, you know, there is an alternate universe where they rock up to the Lynn Family Stadium and are like awed by
right.
It's a home opener for them. It's like we're on a bad run of form, all this stuff, and there is a level of like disrespect in this Locomotive side to go in there and get their first win of the season there. And I think hopefully that set the tone with this squad of like, there is nobody to be afraid of. Like, there is no boogeyman in this league. Like, you don't really need to be afraid of anybody. So yeah, I think like, especially with the confidence that they're bringing in, I do feel good about Locomotive going in on the road and getting something out of this match. I don't think, you know, I think there's every chance that San Diego, like, they have the quality to create those moments of magic, but I haven't been blown away by what they've done. Like, it certainly hasn't had the same feel as something that, like, I would say Sacramento is maybe a little bit further down that line of being impressive, like in the way that they do business. And I think San Diego, like you both have said, like they can be got at. They are not invincible by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, despite their really good home form, they only have a +5 goal difference.
They make
like
Coque Vegas work for his wage packet. I mean, they do.
And he has actually, it's funny, like his stock in my mind has risen so much this season because like last year I thought he was pretty average. And he's actually like in terms of how he's had to work, he's actually climbed a little bit in my mind. So yeah, I think there's definitely like jeopardy in this game, and it's not one where, I mean, early season I probably would have said like San Diego away, like probably too tall of an order, but the way this team's been playing recently and the fact that, I mean, they've gotten good results on the road, like I'm a little less concerned.
So fun fact, Coque Vegas and Mark Navarro their times did overlap at Espanyol Bay. So would be cool if Mark can start this one and play an old colleague from Spain. But yeah,
I would
if Vegas even plays, because San Diego sent out a 16-year-old in net against Tampa Bay this weekend.
No shit, really?
Yeah.
Why do they want to save him for Seattle Sounders? I guess
maybe. I don't know. I don't know what
for penalties.
Yeah, I don't know what the situation is, but the guy that they sent out is apparently like a USMNT like prodigy and Duran Ferry. So I mean, he's not no one, but still, like,
man, clean sheet against Tampa Bay. Take a bow, son. Like,
yeah, that's like hella disrespectful.
He did not make a save though, to be fair.
True. But he had to stand there. He was there.
The only
I couldn't stand there. I'd be scared as shit.
The only loyal player that made a save was the crossbar.
Damn.
Off Cal Jennings. And it was, it was one of those where like he absolutely should like put it away, but the defender got just enough on it to where it deflected onto the bar and over. Like one of those strange ones. Like I said, I don't think that anything that San Diego's doing has been so impressive that we would sit here and be like, oh my God, like there's no shot. I think it will be like, going on the road, like always a question mark, but the fact that short travel relative to, going like out east or something like that. And a team that is solid, but like, I would say that we're, matching that in terms of just like form overall. Like we feel, I think the confidence levels will be at a similar place. So, I think it's up in the air against San Diego, and I'm excited to see how it plays out. Why does it feel like every single team we've played this year plays with a back three, or like, a five, however you want to slice it?
It's like the sexy thing in USL Championship. It's kind of annoying, to be honest.
It's like everybody
play four at the back, you cowards.
It's like even we switch into a 5 sometimes, though. Like, we're not immune to it either.
I don't think we ever like line up that way though. Like I think it's more of a game state thing. I think we're more of like a 4-4-2 than anything else.
There was a moment in this last game where like all of a sudden we were playing like a back 7, and I was like, what is happening?
Brian said as much. I mean, that was the Navarro sub was meant to create like a back 3.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're not immune to it either, I think.
Because I was trying to do the math, and I'm like, wait, if Pitar comes off and Navarro comes on, like, what are we actually playing? Because I guess it was a back 3 because Mark Navarro was playing on the right of a back 3.
Mm-hmm.
But also
positions
don't matter, just like you said.
Yeah. Well, Eder just stopped. He wasn't even in our half anymore. Like, he was exclusively playing as a attacking. He was a winger. Like, not even he wasn't even a wing back. He was just a winger.
He contains multitudes.
Despite the fact that I'm shocked he can even walk after how abused he was in the match. But yeah, so this Saturday, away at Loyal, I guess, guys, are we doing a watch along for that one?
Do it.
What do you do, Phil, when you have those super late kickoffs? Like, do you have caffeine on deck? You just go straight booze? Like,
I typically settle in. Yeah, a nice a nice cozy cocktail for the first half, maybe a beer for the second half, and just kind of ease into. But I will say I don't start, like, if we've got a late kickoff, I'm not going to start drinking in the evening, right? Like I've got to kind of wait until, because otherwise it'll just be a shit show. By 10 p.m. I'll just be hammered on
live.
Right. So
cool.
No, but not a big change. I know it is funny when the games end at like midnight. And then I can't go to sleep, like, because I'm tweeting about the games at 1 a.m. or whatever.
Oh, like that game. Was it a game in Miami last week? The game or in Memphis? No, it was in Vegas. It was Vegas.
Oh, Memphis. Yeah. That didn't kick back off until 2 a.m. or whatever, like local time.
I had to go back and watch the highlights because I just wanted to see like
who was there.
And there were
what kind of ghouls stayed in the stadium.
Yeah, there were like 3 people. Which I'm like, in that situation, right? Are you like, no, I demand to like see the end of the game. I paid to like see the game. You know what I'm saying? Like, what are the rights
I need resolution.
There? Yeah.
Or like, can you legally be like kicked out of the stadium? I see what you're saying, Mika.
Right. Like, I'm so curious.
Yeah, to drag me out of here.
I wonder if like, I mean, surely people like took some naps or like something, right? Like, that is insane.
Beer sales did not stop.
Oh my god.
Beer sales will not be halted in the 7th inning. The amount of just like meme material from USL in this like young season has really been off the charts.
Best league in the world.
You could watch Memphis week in and week out, and you get enough memes to stockpile through the nuclear winter, like they've just been on a different level. But all that being said, I guess that probably brings us to the end of our show. If you've enjoyed, like I said at the top of the show, we're on every podcast platform you could possibly imagine. So follow us on there, subscribe, rate, review, whatever it allows. We really appreciate that. And as well, follow us on social media, primarily Twitter and Instagram, is where you'll see posts. But for the watch along next weekend, you can follow us on Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, I think is the other one. Yeah. So Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, like you can watch the watch along there. And that is strictly just for Locomotive fans to be able to hear Locomotive bias, commentary / analysis throughout the game, on the, instead of the away broadcast. All that being said, thanks everyone for tuning in. We will be back to talk about whatever goes down in San Diego next week. And until then, stay loco.